Today on Sports Talk Philadelphia, it's NBA trade deadline day. Did the Sixers brain trust ruin my show like they did last year? Tune in and find out. After that, Alec Kostel returns to the desk to go over some Phillies we missed last week in our preview show. And finally, everyone's favorite Flyer makes a little history. Zach Granitsky joins us to go over Ghost Bears milestone and where the Flyers are at right now. What has two thumbs and is excited to watch STP? Well, you silly viewer, because Sports Talk Philadelphia starts right now. Let's go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia. I am your host, Tyler Harper, as we continue on here into our spring semester. As I mentioned in the preview, it is NBA trade deadline day, and from the looks of things, Sixers didn't mess everything around this year. Of course, last year, the MCW trade happened. Here, there, and everywhere, there was chaos, but we got it all together. This year, it's a little more calm around this time on the show. So to go over Sixers talk, we've got a great panel. We've got Mr. Anthony Fleet back on the desk, and down on the end, we have Sir Jordan Green, as his Twitter handle likes to say. I always find that great. But so now, Philadelphia 76ers, for the first time in a couple years at the trade deadline, for the most part, they stand pat, don't really do anything. So first, I want to talk to you guys about how kind of odd it is to say that. Because, again, we're so used to Sam Hinkie just changing everything around, whether it's around or close to draft night or whether it's the NBA trade deadline the past couple of years. We're used to all these crazy trades normally involving like second round picks, assets, whatever you want to call them. How kind of strange is it to say, the Sixers didn't really do much at the trade deadline?
Well, it was completely necessary. I mean, there's only so many times you can overturn a roster and just continue to try to sell your fan base on being terrible. I think Sixers fans and a lot of people in the city had enough of the Sixers completely overhauling their roster and trying to rebuild in that kind of a way. So I believe that it was necessary for them to just stand packed, build around Okafor, build around Noel if you can, just continue to lose more games and see what you can get in this upcoming draft. And I think that's where you really start to kind of get an idea of who your young nucleus will be.
Right. I mean, I'm all for the tank, but at the same time, you could only collect so many second-round picks. You need something tangible on the court. You need to develop something. Players need time to develop. You need a chemistry. You hear Noel, Okafor-ish kind of talk to the media, and the last thing you want to do is constantly separate teammates, and I think it puts a bad taste in the agents around the league's mouth, kind of like what we heard around the draft. Yeah,
and you mentioned the bad taste in the agent's mouth, and one could argue that that's why the Sixers brought in Jerry Colangelo, was to kind of save the reputation, because a lot of agents, there was a lot of a buzz saying that, like, clients don't want to play
Porzingis didn't want to interview there.
Yeah, like, a lot of clients didn't want to play for Sam Hinkie because of all this turnover for the past couple of years. So, Jordan, I'll start with you. With Colangelo there now as kind of the guy to, again, try to bring some credibility back to the 76ers. I mean, Fleet, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, but, like, is where you go from here just, all right, now building that chemistry? Because you have some pieces in place and you'll have more going forward because, of course, you've got Saric finally coming over next season and you'll have to see where he fits in. But for the most part, now you got to try to have, like, that core and see if Saric and Embiid can fit into it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with moving one of the bigs, but Saric still hasn't played an NBA game yet. Embiid hasn't played in 2 years. So I think the last thing you want to do is leave a Noel or Okafor by themselves. I think you just really need to start developing these guys. But I think the number one goal at the end of the day is to still acquire a superstar, because let's be honest, superstars win in the NBA. It's very hard to win without a superstar. It's hard to win without multiple superstars. So the last thing you want to do is sign a bunch of Iguodala types. Nothing against Iguodala, it's just I think
It's the Finals MVP you're talking about.
of course, but the goal at the end of the day is talent wins in the NBA, and I think they just have to keep piling on talent and not try to take shortcuts.
But let me offer a rebuttal to that. You mentioned acquiring a superstar. What about, just developing a superstar?
That's what
obviously,
yeah. I mean,
because
the
obviously
draft.
we haven't seen Noel get there yet, and we haven't seen Okafor get there yet, but they're making strides at least.
I liked Embiid coming out a lot in college, but again, the guy hasn't played in 2 years.
Yeah.
Okafor does certain things well on offense. Noel does certain things well on defense, and they're both developing their all-around games to their credit. I think they have gotten better. But, you want two-way players. Maybe Embiid's that, maybe a Ben Simmons is that, or one of the guys coming out. But at this point, it's still a crapshoot. So I think, there's still a lot we don't know. And I think that's the most frustrating part about this team.
I can only imagine if they draft Ben Simmons, just adding another big to that mix. But let's talk about the big they have right now, and that's Jahlil Okafor, who, as you can see his stat at there, not doing too bad, of course, could be considered as the Rookie of the Year or a top candidate for Rookie of the Year. But you see there, tricky, because over the past few days and this past week, more and more buzz was starting to go around of maybe they'll pull the trigger on a deal with Okafor. And maybe not now, as the trade deadline has passed, as he will spend the rest of at least this year as a Philadelphia 76er. Is there a time span on Jahlil Okafor? It seems like he would be the one that people are talking about the most about moving. So going forward, how much longer do you think Ja could be in a Sixers uniform? Obviously it's a tough question to ask, but his name's been the one that's been garnering the most buzz.
He better be a Sixer for at least 4 or 5 years. The guy's unbelievable, especially offensively. What's the knock against Jahlil Okafor? It's his defense. But when defense, a lot of defense comes with attitude. And when you're on such a losing team, and you feel like you're the only one who's doing anything productive offensively, you're not going to want to play defense as hard. But if you get some better players and you start to win more games, then he'll be like, all right, it's time for me to start to become more of a defender, because right now it's just frustrating for him just to be scoring as much as he is and it's not translating to wins, especially coming from college and high school where he's done basically nothing but
He's won his whole life. He just won a national championship last year.
Right.
And you talk about having an attitude. We kind of know from certain TMZ stories that he's got a little bit of an attitude, warranted somewhat. That know what? Not going to touch it anyway. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see next year. Obviously we've all been talking about it because Embiid's been out for the whole year again. But how those three bigs, Ja, Noel, and Embiid, can all coexist, if they can coexist, because now you've got these three. At least at one point, projected number 1 overall picks. Who knows what can happen?
For me, I need to see Embiid healthy and productive for at least 2 years.
For sure.
Before I give up on Okafor.
But it's a tough spot to be in, because you don't want to hurt any of these guys' value in the process of figuring out who's the best, how they played well together. Because, like I said, at some point you probably are going to have to move one of these guys. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But right now, Okafor is probably their most consistent presence. So I think to move him, you definitely have to get something substantial back, maybe at another position.
We'll see. The Sixers are a never-ending saga, so we'll see when they eventually take that step forward. But thank you, Jordan, for joining us for Sixers Talk. When we come back, we previewed Phillies last week, but we will have a couple more Phillies to talk about as camp gets underway. So Alec will join us on desk. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm starving. I could eat the entire container. Ooh, these are good. I love me some goldfish.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm not really hungry right now. I think I'm just gonna make myself something later. Just eat at home. Alright, I'll talk to you later.
Man, I'm stuffed. One more snack, though. This chip and dip looks pretty good. Oh, I can't believe I ate all this. I'm ashamed of myself. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. Now we're going to talk some Phillies as we bring Alec Costavolt back here on the desk. Of course, Alec was on our Phillies preview last week with Matt Breen, but there were a couple Phillies that we missed. That time kind of cut out. So this week we're going to give them their due. So we're going to start with third baseman turned left fielder turned whatever, Cody Asche. Let's take a look at his stats from this past season. 245 batting average, 12 home runs, 39 RBI. Alec, we'll start with you with this. You can see the caption there. With Tyler Goodell being picked in the Rule 5 draft, with Peter Borges being brought in, and of course with Aaron Altair on the rise, is Cody Asche the odd man out in this outfield?
If he doesn't perform in spring training, absolutely. Because there's too much talent, too much possibility in the Phillies outfield right now for Cody Asche to be hitting 245. Although, I mean, he did split time with other outfielders and at third base with Maikel Franco during last season. Those stats just aren't there for him to be that left field starter. I mean, give the Rule 5 Goodell a chance. Give Altair, well, I guess Altair will be in right.
Yeah, maybe like Peter Borges or...
Yeah, maybe Borges, but they have options. Heck, even if Nick Williams does well
he is
in
coming
spring
on strong.
training, you know, you never know.
Mm-hmm. Fleet, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Alec nailed it with the young potential that the Phillies have for their outfield. I think Cody Asche, he's kind of just like a logjam in all this. I mean, if he comes out in the spring training and puts on an unbelievable performance, then, you know, the position is basically his to lose. And there was a story about him saying he's confident and determined that he's going to go out and be the starting left fielder. And it's just like, okay, you got to prove it. You know, you have a much shorter leash than you had in the past. You were that upcoming guy, and you weren't able to prove it. So now there's plenty more young upcoming players who have the potential to prove that, all right, I'm going to be the left fielder, not you, Cody Asche. So Cody Asche has a lot to prove in spring training.
Yeah, and you mentioned that article where he came out like this week and said that like he wants to make that claim. Well, in that article, Jim Salisbury also said too that like, yeah, he has upside as a utility player, but if your options are left field and third base, I don't know if there's a place for Cody Asche on this roster at all.
Especially not at third base with Franco.
Yeah, not at third base with Franco. Plus, you've got Andres Blanco back who can play third base, who could play anywhere really in the infield. You have Darren Ruff who could be there at first base. You have all those options in the outfield. I don't know how many options he has left on his contract, if any, but it might be close to time to cut ties with Cody Asche, which is unfortunate to say because he at one point had a lot of promise, but unfortunately he just got passed by. Alec, your thoughts?
He did get passed by. I mean, I remember back when when he was in Reading, he got moved up to AAA, and here came Maikel Franco, and whoo, we thought Asche had something, and here's Franco hitting 300 with, you know, these long home runs, and we're just like, whew, we got to stand back and watch out for this guy. I don't know what we're going to do with Asche. Honestly, I feel like he's going to be the next to be traded.
Yeah, I feel as though it's better to cut ties with him sooner rather than keep him around long like you did with Dominic Brown. Yeah. And you saw how that kind of spiraled, you know, out of control. So best to just cut ties sooner rather than later. But let him come out in spring, see if he can prove himself. If not, you know, time to go.
Yeah, and Alec, real quick, I just want your thoughts. Again, we've talked about this before, but David Hernandez. He's, of course, labeled as the favorite for the closer. You can see the stats there. But real quick, does this team really need a closer? I'm still not convinced that they need to label someone as the closer moving forward.
I feel like they definitely could go in the season with closer by committee, but I wouldn't be surprised if like Mojica or one of the other minor league free agents that we signed could get the job.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just whoever gets a hot streak, like whoever, all right, is doing good right now, they're the closer for a little bit, and then like roles get changed around. Again, they're not going to make the postseason. They're not probably going to come close. So just let them play out. And again, spring training just started. So let's see where they're at after a few weeks. But thank you, Alec, for coming on to kind of recap some Phillies that we missed. But when we return, we're going to talk about the orange and black as Zach Granitsky comes on to talk Philadelphia Flyers. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia, ladies and gentlemen. We've reached our final segment of the show to talk about the Orange and Black. So, of course, if I'm talking hockey on Sports Talk Philadelphia, who else am I going to have on but Zach Granitsky? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
Yeah, you're talking about hockey. Of course you're
Yeah,
doing good.
exactly.
So let's talk about the Philadelphia Flyers in this past month of February because, as per usual this season, it's been kind of an up and down month. As you can see, either record here, 4-5, 28 goals for them, 22 goals against. Again, just like the caption says, more of the same. Like we knew this was going to be what this team was, just middle of the road. Like if they make the playoffs, great. If not, oh well. But Zach, I know you've proclaimed a couple times on the show that you think this team can make the playoffs. I'm gonna go against that claim. Now, this isn't a bad thing though. This isn't me saying like, oh, like they think they don't deserve a playoff spot. Like it's whatever. Like we know what the future holds. Like the Flyers front office really has the clearest plan. So again, it's not going to break anybody's heart if they don't make the playoffs, correct?
Oh, definitely not, because I'm starting to doubt my claim, actually. I mean, you know, we're talking about this month. Okay, so they were on a 3-game lose streak, 1-1, lost 2 again after they snapped that 3-game lose streak. That's not how you make the playoffs. It's just not.
Oh, yeah, and of course they go on a little bit of a losing streak, and then just the other night they proceed to kick the tar out of the New Jersey Devils and win by a score of 6-3. So it's kind of funny how things work. And, of course, Hackstall had a line change with that. But, Fleet, I mean, you were talking before we went on air about the annoying Flyers, about how the inconsistencies, while we know this is the plan, it still bugs us a little bit.
Yeah, right, exactly. You said it. You know, we expected the inconsistency, but just to sit here and witness it, especially when all the other Philly teams stink, it's just annoying when you have a team that has the potential to make the playoffs and they just continue to play as inconsistent as they do. So for me personally, it drives me crazy. But I think for a lot of diehard Flyer fans, there's just that wishful thinking that they will make the playoffs just so they can brag to the other sports, like the other diehards for the other sports teams to say, at least our team's making the playoffs. Like, what are your teams doing? Because from what I've witnessed, a lot of Flyer fans are very defensive about their team and about their sport.
Yeah.
So they tend to go a little crazy. So just for Philly's sake, I want them to make the playoffs just because there's really no bright future, at least immediately. So at least make the playoffs. You never know. In 2010, when they made the Stanley Cup final, they were a 7th seed. They hosted the Eastern Conference Finals as a 7th seed. So you never know. All you have to do is get in. You never know what can happen.
Yeah, let's make the playoffs this year, guys, and get bounced by the Capitals in the first round.
The Capitals always choke, though. So if they play the Capitals, I won't worry. They always choke.
They've been hot this year. Anyway, but we talked a little bit about the Sixers and how they stayed pat at the deadline. Real quick from you guys, I don't really see the Flyers making any moves at the deadline. I don't think they need to. I don't think they're really buyers or sellers. I think they just need to stay the course. Do you guys agree? Zach, we'll start with you.
I do agree, because, I mean, this team they have right now, they'll be good in at least 2 years. They're going to the playoffs in at least 2 years. I'll make that claim.
Oh, we're stretching your prediction now. Okay.
At least 2, because, I mean, it's a young team. I'm sure we're going to talk about the Ghost soon. They have the Ghost.
Spoiler alert,
so,
but
yeah, they'll make the playoffs soon as long as they don't, make any major changes.
Yeah, Fleet, you don't see any moves at the deadline, do you?
Not really. I mean, the mood has been going back and forth a lot. There's been talk about, when the Flyers lose, when they're in the middle of their losing streak, it's like, trade Giroux, just blow this whole thing up. And then when they win a couple of games, it's like, oh, you know what? We're actually pretty good. Maybe we should just keep this team together. Maybe they can make a run. But again, it's just that inconsistent play of theirs that causes us to just react inconsistently, whether they should blow the team up or keep everything intact.
Yeah, you don't really. If you're going to be inconsistent, then there's no point of really doing anything. You don't want to be sellers. Like you mentioned, the trade Giroux argument. I hate that argument so much. He's one of the best players in the NHL. Why would you get rid of him? But speaking of best players, let's talk about one of the best future stars in the NHL right now, and I think that's fair to say. Shane Gostisbehere. See, you almost saw there. That graphic was kind of ghostly. But anyway, there you can see the stats for Shane Gostisbehere: 11 goals, 21 assists. This past week set the record for longest point streak by a rookie NHL defenseman. That streak is currently still going at 13 games. Wow. When we brought this kid up, we knew, all right, he was promising, and we knew that he was going to have a good amount of progress. But the fact that, the fact that he continued to have this momentum and he's exceeding expectations, that's a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. Now he's top 5 on the team in points. As you saw, he has 32 points already, and he hasn't even played the entire season. And a scoring punch that the Flyers definitely needed, considering that a lot of their wingers aren't very productive as far as goal scorers outside of the top 3 guys that they have with Voracek, Drew, and Simmons.
Right.
So you need a scoring punch from basically anywhere, but especially from the defensive line, because a lot of their defensemen recently, since Pronger left, they haven't been really good with scoring. You know, Timonen, he was pretty good, but you need somebody young. You need that, you know, kind of renaissance with the defense. So I like Ghost's future, and I hope he can, you know, continue to just build and develop and become the superstar that we expect him to be.
Zach?
Yeah, I love when the defenseman is the superstar on the team, and I love when a defenseman can score, because when you have a scoring defenseman, hello? Defensemen don't score, they get assists. But, and I would like to think, like, okay, the Ghost in, I like saying the Ghost instead of Gossosphere. But, okay,
It's
so
easier to pronounce.
Gossosphere right now versus Timonen in his prime, I think the Ghost would probably score more than Timonen.
Yeah, I mean, they were somewhat different players too. Like Timonen in his prime was an offensive defenseman, but they're built a little differently too. Like Timonen, like he had a lot of physical presence, and Gossosphere, like he's doing that, but obviously he's more offense first. So I think jury's still out on that, because again, it's still only his rookie year.
Yeah.
But still, even so, like he's up there in top 3 candidates right now for the Calder Trophy, which is given to the Rookie of the Year. That's, again, that's huge. And it's kind of funny. I found this stat out the other day that no Flyer has ever won the Calder Trophy. No Flyer has ever been named Rookie of the Year. So how kind of cool would it be, like kind of a silver lining if they don't make the playoffs, for Gossosphere to be the one given the Calder Trophy for the first time in franchise history, along with that record?
Well, I'm a little negative, so if they don't make the Flyers, if they don't make the playoffs, I don't really care if he wins the Rookie of the Year award or not. I mean, I guess it'd be cool for him, but really, I'm looking at it as I want team success. I don't really care about individual success.
That's true. That and MCW got Rookie of the Year a couple years ago, and we saw what happened there. But Zach, it would still be cool.
I mean, you know, as the Flyers being my favorite Philly team, I would love it personally, and I'd probably be like, check this out, Phillies, check this out, Eagles, look what we got.
I'm sure those teams would be so heartbroken that you would be saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Again, it would be a cool, like, again, a feather in the cap, but just a nice little silver lining. But how crazy is it too that like this guy, like he wasn't like a top overall pick. He wasn't even a first round pick. I believe he was picked in like the 3rd round. And of course, we talk about like late draft pick success. A lot of NHL superstars like are kind of more in the, I guess, mid to early rounds. But and of course, everyone makes the Tom Brady comparison to the NFL if he was 190 whatever overall. But it's kind of interesting that like these superstars or potential superstars can be found in such low levels of the draft.
Yeah, I think it's great. And when you look at the sports landscape, you kind of wonder when you see other teams and how they're able to excel with late draft picks. And you just sit back and wonder, like, I wonder why Philly teams can't seem to find that. But, you know, the Flyers were able to do that with Gossosphere, and hopefully, again, the league will most likely adjust to his style of play. And it's important to see how he adjusts to that adjustment, if that makes sense. Because that will really prove how good of a player he is. Because if the league adjusts to you and you kind of just keep doing what you do, then you're not going to be as successful. So it's important for him to be, you know, always on the edge, always, you know, seeing how the other teams adjust to him, and for him to be able to make those kind of personal changes to keep himself being one of the top defensemen that he is right now.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's all about adjustments, counter adjustments, so on and so forth. Like Billy Beane said in Moneyball, adapt or die. Yeah. Like you've got to always be adapting, otherwise you're going to be left behind. So now we move on to our favorite segment on the show. Now we adapt onto the Fast Five. Transitions, people, they're key. So now, Anthony Fleet, we're going to start with you. There's been a lot of buzz about Kanye this week on social media. Would you invest money in Kanye West, and why?
No, why would I invest any of my money?
It's just a question.
Money. I don't even have that much money. I would probably put him in more debt. I don't have any money to give him. Like, he's an idiot, in my opinion.
Oh, he's a complete idiot.
And you know, I don't even care about him. You know, ask your Kardashian family for money. They have plenty of money. Ask them.
I may or may not have asked you that question to try to get a rise out of you, so thank you very much for that. Zach, this is kind of a trivia question because I know you've watched this TV show before. Valentine's Day was this past weekend, but of course February 13th the past couple years has been known as Galentine's Day. So what famous TV show from the past couple years spurred that little holiday?
I'm just going to take a guess. Was it How I Met Your Mother?
No, it was Parks and Recreation.
Ah, okay. Yes, I do watch that show. So.
Which is a show I'm currently binge watching on Netflix right now. So far, so good. Anthony Fleet, we were talking about this a little bit before we went on air, but thoughts on how ridiculous and how cool NBA All-Star Weekend was. Everything from obviously that crazy dunk contest to the game, which even though the West, got close to 200 points, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like Saturday much more. The All-Star game itself was complete garbage. It was just basically a bunch of guys just standing around. It was basically like a shoot-around, but guys were wearing like fancy jerseys. And for Kobe to not, this was your chance to really step up. Like, you want to take all this control on the Lakers and you're not doing any winning. But this was the grand platform for you to step up, win the MVP like Magic Johnson did in his last All-Star game. And you kind of take a back seat and you're just laughing and giggling. So that was one thing that I thought was weird. Like, what?
Well, he said he wanted to do that.
But why? Like,
I don't know, but.
But you want to take all this assertion to your young rookies and halt the development of the Lakers? That didn't really make a lot of sense. But anyway,
we got to move on. We got to move on.
I can go on and on about that.
Zach Granitsky, the Flyers and Rangers this past weekend had 2 fights in about the first 5 minutes of the game. Of course, lots of complications there. How long do you think you would last in a hockey fight?
Well, it depends on how angry I am, because I'm much of a subtle kind of guy. So I don't know.
30 seconds.
2 minutes.
All right. I'll take your word for it.
2
Fleet,
minutes.
last question, real quick. Jared Allen this past week did a very cool thing on social media. He announced he was retiring on Twitter by literally riding off into the sunset on a horse. Of course, he's a big rodeo guy. Interesting, but kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
good for him.
Yeah, I guess. He's a royal guy. Whatever. I
Whatever.
don't care about Jared Allen.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Anthony. And thank you to Zach, Jordan, and Alec for all joining me. Be sure to check us out on social media as well. You know where to find us. We're everywhere on social media, as we should be. So thank you guys for joining in, and we will see you next time.